What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We are back after a summer hiatus, vacation, whatever you want to call it. I pulled this thing out, this microphone of mine out, and it legit had cobwebs on it because I have not done anything football-wise other than some Lions Wire stuff since May. I mean, May, June. I haven't done much in, 40, 45 days, but it's been nice. But I'm happy to be back because football is back. We have the Hall of Fame game on tonight, the Bears and the Texans. Can't wait for that. But we're here to talk Detroit Lions. And with me, as always, Scott Bischoff, my man. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back with you. This is cool. Super excited about the Lions.
Yeah.
Excited that we're at this point already. It's August, and the dog days of what feels like it takes forever is behind us. So we're speeding forward, to week one. We got a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of stuff to happen between now and then, but how are you?
Yeah. I'm good, man. I mean, we're good. We're coaching football. We're looking at training camp. I'm excited for college football season to get going, but obviously talking Lions is what we're here to do. And I can't wait. I mean, we're 9 days, 10 days into training camp, whatever it is now. There's all kind of hype and buzz and everything like that around everything. So, I mean, let's just jump into training camp because it's like, the years pass. We've all been over this. It feels like we know what our team has been for 30 plus years, but everything is different. We're going to get into the expectations momentarily, but training camp just feels different this year. And even the players have come out and said that. The coaches have come out and said that. I've heard it on my morning drives, on the radio. They've said, it's just a different type of intensity around this team. Aiden Hutchinson came out and said that. He said, this is just a different team. We are different than we've ever been, and we're excited. And it's just like, there's so many positives going on with this team. I can't wait for the season, but ultimately when I look at training camp in this roster, and I just love looking at the roster because for consecutive off seasons and really for 3 years now under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, this football team continues to get better and better and better. And I love the depth everywhere across the board, from the defensive line to the secondary. I like the receivers that we have. I mean, you obviously have the question mark of like, who's going to be that number 3 receiver? And we think Jamo is going to be the number 2, but who's going to be number 3? Is it Antoine Green, Khalif Raymond? Is it an undrafted free agent rookie, Isaiah Williams? Who's it going to be? But I love everything that I'm seeing with training camp. And, one big thing that continues to kind of stand out to me is like Maurice Norris, the rookie, safety corner, the defensive back out of Fresno State. He's a player that I continue to read about, continue to kind of hear about as this guy that's kind of got this dog mentality. Undrafted free agent. Do they find something there in their secondary that's already deep? But do you have another piece here that maybe you practice squad them and you develop them? That's what I love about training camp, because you find these hidden gems, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're talking in week 6, week 7 about this guy that we talked about right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I love about training camp. But anything standing out to you from the training camp standpoint?
So some of it is a touch of the unknown, and with as much turnover as there was in the secondary, it's like, how did these guys gel? And where did some of these guys even play? What's the ones and the twos kind of thing? It's interesting to me that, and I don't know what your take on it is, but where Emmanuel Mosley is playing and how they're moving Branch to more of a safety role. And it's like, that's fascinating, but it's just, if you just look at like you mentioned this, they're loaded in their secondary. if you have Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, and Melifonwu as your safeties, I mean, I know Melifonwu's been injured and struggles to stay healthy all the time, but that's really good, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got, I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of people talking so much about Carlton Davis, so I don't know what to make of that, right? But it sounds like the younger dudes are bringing some juice every day. I know they've talked openly about them playing fast and doing a lot of pressing, and I think it gives them Aaron Glenn a little bit of what he's wanted to do for years, but just hasn't had the personnel to do. But I mean, as from the secondary goes, that's interesting to me. The D line sounds like they're doing good things. There's one particular name that's kind of popped. He at the end of last year, I thought he played really well, Levi Onwuzurike. And it sounds like he's had a really good camp. And I think people forget because it's a couple years ago, but he wrecks stuff.
Yeah.
In college. And I mean, I know he's a touch on the undersized side, but super disruptive 3-tech. Sounds like he's having a really good camp. Let's see, on offense, I think the entire thing on offense is just keeping the train rolling, down the hill sort of things.
Yeah.
But the Jameson Williams stuff just will not stop. It just won't stop, right? So what do we make of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of hype around Jamo. We can get into other stuff on training camp too momentarily, but Jamo, Ben Johnson talked incredibly high of him today, saying he's matured. We've heard Dan Campbell talk about that. His mentality, the way his mentality is allowing him to embrace different roles within the offense, and all he wants to do is provide a spark to the offense. And it's like, if you think back to last year, he didn't get the ball every time, but almost every single time he touched the football, it was a big play. It was some type of big gain. It was a first down catch. It was a touchdown. It was something. And it's, I saw some clips of him during camp so far, and he looks like so much more under control. Like
raw running?
Yeah. Like last year he was super wiry, and like this leg would go that way, but that arm would go this way, and like things weren't lined up. And now everything is there under control, and he can now run that stick route, that comeback route, that curl route. Those things are going to matter when you talk about timing with Jared Goff and him running those routes with something happening either underneath it or over the top of it with Laporta and St. Brown. So I think Jamo can explode this year. I mean, I don't know what number you want to throw out there as far as number of receptions.
I don't.
But it feels like it could easily be 70 plus with the way the talk is around what he can do.
As long as everybody stays reasonably healthy, if he's a 70 plus catch guy, they are one of the top offenses in the NFL, if not maybe the top offense in the NFL. If he is a 70 catch, 1,100 yard guy, and it's tough to see him not be. I mean, 70 catches for a guy like him with his speed, you would think that he'd have a pretty healthy average too.
Yeah.
And then the rushing stuff. I mean, last year at the end of the season, it felt like every time I heard his name, I wanted to put a fork in an electric socket. Like, you know what I mean? Just because that's what it felt like. Every time he touched the ball, it was electric. There was something that was crazy. You know, whether it's him, how far did he jump? The one touchdown where he ran, I mean, he jumped like 9 or 10 yards. He jumped from the 4, halfway into the end zone, just crazy. But if he provides that kind of spark for them and that kind of production, it does take this offense to a different, and they were great last year, but it takes this offense to a completely different level. It'll diminish a touch of the rushing numbers for the running backs if he does do that kind of stuff, because he's going to score from long distance.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also, if he is reliable and producing like that, he is opening huge parts of the field for other players. So
I will say, I think I jumped the gun on the 70 catch stuff. I looked at Deshaun Jackson's numbers from, because I think that's a player that I don't want to say that's who you would compare him to, but like statistically and probably stylistically kind of comparable with the splashiness and the explosiveness.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson's best season in the NFL was 2013, 82 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He never caught 70 passes in a season. His first 2 seasons, he caught 62 receptions, and then it was really a lot of like high 50s, middle 50s.
Honestly, I think if Jamo gives you 60 catches for 1,000 yards, which is reasonable, you're cooking, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Anything more, you wonder something happened. Something happened to somebody else. So, but still, I mean, the point stands that if he emerges as a partner in crime with St. Brown, and makes big plays happen every once in a while, it's huge for that offense. And it sounds to me like I don't know that they're manufacturing this hype. That happens, right? So, we'll talk about a player I think that they might be manufacturing hype for. I haven't been there, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
And it's a player I really like coming out, but it just, I don't know that they're manufacturing hype for him. If anything, he may be living up to what their expectations were, where maybe last year he wasn't at this point. So in a year, he's grown up a little and figured it out. But yeah, I mean, he's a huge part of training camp. He is a huge part of this.
Absolutely. And I have 2 players, or really 2 positions that I wanted to touch from training camp, just looking at news and notes and talking with Risden and other people that have been going and stuff like that. The tight end battle for the 3rd spot on the roster and 4th spot on the roster. The Lions might only carry 3 tight ends this year. Maybe they carry 4. It really sounds like Shane Zylstra's kind of struggling, and it's really opened the door for players like James Mitchell and Parker Hess, who is a veteran from Atlanta, more of a blocking tight end. And I would probably, if you go to training camp or you're looking at the depth chart of the roster, I would circle Parker Hess and probably be prepared to see more of him this summer and potentially fall, because he's a Dan Campbell type of guy, a really good blocker. I watched 2 games from 2022. One game was against Cleveland and the other game was against the Saints. I watched those 2 games from him, and his ability to block and just play in line consistently. And at times, check release, get out to the flats, run a corner route, a dig route, whatever, it's there. But his ability to block and help establish the run game is going to be very beneficial when they want to go into those 2 tight end sets, and they can put Sam Laporta either in line or out in the slot. And then you can put, Laporta in the slot with Jamo and St. Brown and Parker Hess in line and just run underneath that all day.
Yeah.
I think that's going to play a big role for this team. And then really the other player is it sounds like Jack Campbell has taken a massive step forward from where he was last year. The game's starting to, and kind of similar to Jamo, right? The game's starting to slow down for these guys. They're starting to see things. They're becoming veterans. And I was really scratching my head when we drafted Jack Campbell. And then the more and more I thought about it, and I'm a fan of him. I bought his jersey. That's how much I like the guy. But I truly stand by the fact that I think that guy is going to be here for 10 to 12 years, a long-time vet, and I think he's going to take a huge step forward for this defense and really start manning the middle of that defense. I genuinely believe that and feel that's going to happen at some point this season.
Again, that's nothing but good news, right? So if it happens, it's great. It's just that particular position to me in Canada, you get used. I think at the Mike position, you get used to the plays that the offense runs. You know what it's like. Like the Mike linebacker on your defense in high school can sniff out plays in practice because he sees them over and over and over.
Yeah.
So it's one thing for him to have taken a step and look the part against what he sees very regularly. It's an entirely different thing for that to happen in the regular season. If it does, that's great. Huge, but yeah, it's just, we've talked about tight end 3 or 4, and a middle linebacker, right? So, and a receiver, that this team they have this team in a great position.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to hop into the expectations or into that kind of stuff, but
well, I was going to just go from the training camp part to the player that you were kind of talking about with some hype, and really because off of training camp the other day, we got the news that John Cominsky tore his MCL and is done for the regular season, maybe back in 5 or 6 months. So if they're in the playoffs, maybe he's back. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it's one of those where, a lot of people were like, okay, no big deal. It is what it is. That's just a depth guy. But John Cominsky offered this team, I think, more than just depth. I think he was a leader for this defensive line. He helped players like Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson get comfortable into the roles in Detroit. Roderick Martin and those players. And Cominsky is a guy that played, 52, 53% of snaps last season and the season before. He can get pressures. I mean, 2 years ago, he was second on the team in pressures, he's a guy that had a serious role with this defense, and the way he squeezes blocks down and fights pressure with pressure and the versatility, he frees up so many players, and that's why Alexander Zaloni's been so productive. Derek Barnes has taken a big step forward because a guy like John Cominsky's up there getting blocked by 2 or 3 people so they can roam freely. Losing him is going to be more impactful than I think people think, but on the contrary, as you want to talk about here, there's a player that seems to just really be kind of putting it all together.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we all need to remember, too, that DJ Reader has not practiced yet. So his presence in the middle of that D-line hasn't been felt. But Levi Onwuzurike, it feels like, okay, conspiracy time. Maybe. I'm not saying they're manufacturing this buzz for him, but it does feel, and he did play pretty good at the end of the season. In fact, I think PFF liked him at the end of the season. I really liked him coming out of college as a super disruptive, 3-tech type. But the question I have is, where is he going to play? If he emerges and he has taken this step and is just a force, right? You have McNeil, you have Reader, and I know you're going to have rotation and all that stuff, but where's he going to play? Is he going to play a little more outside than I think? Is he going to absorb all of the Cominsky snaps as a 5? Right? Now, if he does that, and he can be effective in doing the things Cominsky did while being more disruptive as a pass rusher, then that's phenomenal and that's great. And as I'm fleshing this out, maybe that's more the case than, being conspiratorial and thinking that they're trying to drum up interest to move him, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much talk about all this stuff, about him. Maybe the back stuff has gotten behind him, and he has emerged stronger, a little more loose, a little more flexible, a little more bendy, all that stuff. If that's the case, it's great. Again, it's nothing but good news for the Detroit Lions. But it just strikes me as, where's he going to play? How many minutes are there for him? How many snaps are there for him on this D line already? And as coming into the NFL as a 3-tech, are you going to slide him out and play him as a 5, maybe further away from the ball? That's what I thought they were going to do with Wingo. Mm-hmm. That's where I think Pascal wins. And it's like there are bodies there, and if he's leaped all those guys and is going to play there, that's huge. It's great, and but it strikes me as interesting that he's getting talked about the way he is.
I think you hit the nail on the head too. Like, I think he plays as a 5-tech. I don't know if they're hyping him up to, like you mentioned, move some interest and potentially trying to trade him and get something out of him. But it sounds like he's had just a phenomenal camp so far. And again, it could be just hype, but yeah. I do think he's getting back into form and he's healthy and the back isn't really as much of an issue as it was. And now he's good. And I think we also have to remember too, like when he got banged up in college and that was coming out of COVID, like things, the world didn't, it was a little bit different back in obviously 2020, 2021. So we're kind of back to normal in a sense and things are good. So maybe he's finally normal and this is just the type of player that he is. And it's super explosive and he's going to get you. Yeah, he's going to get you 400 or 500 snaps and he's going to play opposite of Hutch at times and Davenport's going to bump inside or whatever's going to happen. And that's what I love about this defensive line is like there's so many combinations of what you can do on every particular down and distance, whether it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 11. Yeah, you can mix and match so many things and they're going to be just fine. And as you mentioned with the training camp stuff earlier, like the secondary is doing a really good job right now. We're seeing Rakestraw play in the slot. We're seeing Branch play at safety. We're seeing Mosley play in the slot. And it's like, is the vision of the dime package finally coming to life here in Detroit where you can put Brian Branch at this nickel, Emmanuel Mosley here, Arnold and Carlton Davis on the outside with Melifonwu and Joseph over to the top. And then you have, Anzalone or Jack Campbell or both those guys in the middle with maybe an odd front, like we're going to see so many different things that I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of an odd front of a 5-man front with let's say Davenport walked up and Hutchinson walked up in a 2-point stance with Reeder, McNeil, and a player like Onwuzurike or Pascal as a 3 or a 5.
Yeah.
Is yes, please, right? Like that kind of stuff. Maybe that is some of what we're going to see. I'd love to know if that's how they're deploying some of those guys in team drills.
Right. Well, and then you have James Houston. You have Betts from the CFL, and I think he's going to make the roster, and I think he should have some type of role situationally, probably. But you bring in those guys. Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different combinations that they're going to have that this preseason is going to be very pivotal to figuring some of that stuff out, obviously. But to have this depth, to go from not having it to having it now is going to, I think, do wonders for this defense. Again, losing Cominsky is going to hurt, but Onwuzurike coming on, this might be a blessing in disguise. So,
yeah, I mean, Cominsky getting hurt sucks. I mean, it's just losing a glue guy like that sucks.
Yep.
But these injuries suck, and it's cross your fingers and hope that's the end of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully, but we have to cross our fingers to the expectations of this team right now because it's extremely high across the board. And I just want to see what people make of it, whether it's the fans, are they drinking the Kool-Aid? Are we all in here? Or are you still a little optimistic? Let us know in the comments below. But I feel like this is second best team in the NFC, maybe the best team in the NFC, because I don't feel like the Eagles are as deep as the Lions. I really don't feel like the 49ers are as deep as the Lions, and the Lions had them beat. And, we can talk about that a different time. But the Cowboys, they got worse. Are the Packers the sleeper? I don't know. But the Lions are legit. It just is what it is. This team is legit under Dan Campbell.
They are. And, it's for the longest time, we've clung to any little bit of positivity, right? Knowing that in the end, it wasn't going to mean all that much. Very different now. Even last year last year shocked people, me included. Yeah. They deserve to be where they were last year, though. They played really well, and they got a lot better this offseason. So I'm with you. I don't know that, you can go player for player, and if you want to say the Eagles are a better roster than the Lions are, and you're entrenched in that perspective, cool. If you think the 49ers are also fine, but I like where the Lions are. I like their young players. Adding a player like Terry and Arnold, right, in the drafts, and then Rakestraw, who unsurprisingly looks like a totally different dude with pads on. Those are huge moves. Normally really good teams don't get to add those kind of young pieces. They just don't, right?
Yeah.
So a team that was in the NFC Championship got a pretty elite corner in the draft and then added a really good corner in round 2. And obviously it was the weakness of their defense, but you got a lot better in the offseason. So that for a team that was as good as they were last year, to get to make the improvements they've made, it's hard to see that.
Yeah.
But they've done it, and I don't think I guess it's just my way of saying the expectations are as high as you want to put them.
Yeah.
For this team. If you want to say they should be in the Super Bowl, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
If you want to say that, and I think it's more reasonable to say that to get there, I mean, to get to the Super Bowl, things have to go really, you got to get some, like the 49ers got some good fortune last year to make it to the Super Bowl. The Lions are going to need some of that, but from a talent perspective, they're as good as anybody else in the NFC. They are.
Yep. No, and
I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth.
I know. And really, I mean, like, dude, I put it up against teams in the AFC, and it's like you put it across the whole league, and I it's hard not to put them in the top 5. And I'm like, am I being biased? No, I don't think I am. Like, this team is just, they are different under this coaching staff, under this general manager, and collectively as a group. And you mentioned all the talent that they bring in from Arnold to Rakestraw across the board. And it's like, I don't care.
Young. It's like they're ascending. They're it's not like the window is open last year and open this year and then it's going to shut. No.
Right. And for me personally, like, I don't care if they win 15 games or 10 games. Just get into the playoffs. That's all I'm asking this team to do. And if that means they only got to get 9 wins, cool. Just get in. Because I feel like when this team gets in and everything kind of irons itself out, at the end of the day, they're going to be the team, I think, one of the teams left standing. And that's just how I feel when I look at the expectations for this team. And when you see the national media doing the same thing, when the national media for decades didn't even have 5 minutes of airtime for the Lions, and now you turn on ESPN or whatever, and this is sometimes all they're talking about, like, it's a great problem to have. And, and I'll say this, a lot has to be, the hat has to be tipped to Jared Goff too. I mean, Jared Goff
absolutely
has been orchestrating as the guy for multiple top 5 offenses. I think Dan Orlovsky had a tweet yesterday or the day before, over like the last 6 or 7 years, he's been the quarterback for 5 of the top 2 or 3 best offenses in football. Like, that's not a mistake. That's not just, sure, it's great coaching and it's good players around him, but he's still got to go out and execute. He still has to not throw interceptions. He still has to not take bad sacks. He's not doing any of those things. He's operating efficiently, and he is so comfortable here and so well liked and adored. Like, having all of that, I think we saw what it did last year, and I think seeing it all kind of come back together again this year, I think that's why the expectations are where they are. So
yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. It's I'm interested to see what happens. Preseason game 1, I think we have a week and a day for that.
Yep.
I think it's going to be interesting. What do we have? 5 weeks, 6 weeks before the season starts, whatever it is. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a great time. It's obviously a great time to be a Lions fan, you trust Holmes and Campbell and those guys to do smart things, and I think that with the talent that they have and what they've added, the sky's the limit for this team. It just is. Yeah.
It literally just hit me that it's August 1st.
Yeah.
I looked up at the top right of the computer. I was like, oh my God, it's August 1st.
Yeah. Like, July is always, if you're a football guy, July is always the worst month because it's like,
it takes forever, don't it?
Yeah. There's no end in sight. And now, we are not that far away from being able to watch the Lions play. We're 8 days.
That's awesome.
Whatever. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, getting into August means you guys get closer to fantasy football, and that means you guys can play with us, against us, however you want to write that out. But join our Detroit Lions Podcast Fantasy Football League. You can go to fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. There'll be a link in there. You follow all the rules and regulations to sign up and get in and get your entries in to be a part of our fantasy football league. So check it out over at fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. And of course, you guys,
do that.
Yes.
Yeah, please do that. Yeah.
But of course, you guys can rate, review, and subscribe to the show as well at Detroit Lions Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms. And of course, you can follow Scott and I on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft, at Bischoff_Scott. Do you have anything else? It was a very basic, straightforward episode, shaking the rust off and talking some training camp.
Yeah, and we'll dial in some stuff as camp moves along.
Yeah,
we're good.
Well, cool. I got nothing else. He's got nothing else. This is episode 1 of the 2024 season, I guess you could call it, or I don't even know how many episodes we've done. I think this is like 35 or something like that, but we'll be back pretty regularly moving forward. I don't know if we'll hit one next week or the week after. We'll figure out our schedules for the month of August, but just, again, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Stay locked in, and we'll keep you updated with every episode. But he's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions Podcast.